found my way to the NHL, and then retired at the age of 28, and that was kind of, where I was at a crossroads of life and career, and kind of got into what I am into today.
Hey guys, welcome to a special, huge, monumental episode of Cruisin with Zach. It's episode 50, made it to the half-century mark, so we had to go all out. Also, new glasses, the wireframes are out, and now that I see it on camera, I kind of look like Will Ferrell playing Harry Carey.
I like him.
All right. But also, we have Riley Cote, ex-Flyers, doing some great work. Riley, thanks for being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. It's cool.
So a lot of build-up for this episode, and I was telling people you might be more well-known now for what you're doing than when you were playing for the Orange and Black. But before we tell people where you're going, we have to know where you've been. So tell us about your path to the NHL and your stint with the Flyers.
Sure, yeah. I think my experience and story is somewhat unique and interesting, where I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, as one of the bigger fish in the small pond in that city, and loved hockey. Grew up playing hockey in the pond in the local rink, and I was drafted to the Western Hockey League at 15 and a half. Moved away when I was 16. And played 4 years of junior hockey in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Was never drafted. My first 2 years, I took a lesser role. It was very humbling. It was a little bit of a culture shock. And then my last 2 years, I was more of in a significant role and more of an offensive role. But not being drafted, I had a lot of questions on how I was going to find my way, if I was ever going to find my way, and what I needed to do to be recognized more. So when I turned pro at the age of 20, I just said, I'm going to fight the biggest guy and the guy with the most penalty minutes, and that was the way I was going to get noticed. I was looking at the guys getting called up. It was lots of goals and lots of penalty minutes.
Yeah. So you have two beautiful daughters, cute as a button.
Yeah, they're great.
Did they know what Daddy did for a living?
They know I played hockey. They associate me with some hockey because I do a lot of teaching and coaching still, but they don't really know what I did. They'll never understand the role fully until they're older, I think. Just understanding the game within the game, because you identify someone with a sport, but I really didn't play hockey. Let's be serious. You know what I mean? It's like I suited up as a hockey player. I had a stick in my hands, but me going into games, my approach was certainly different than a lot of players. So it's like the night before, the day of, before the game, it was always on my mind. I couldn't get it out of my mind, and then the national anthem, pacing back and forth and knowing I'm going to fight, it never left, my mind. So it was hard. It's hard to deal with. It's hard to explain to someone, I would have loved to have been a UFC fighter, telling you the honest truth, where I just know 10 p.m. Saturday night, the bell is ringing, the cage is closed, I'm fighting. I could,
right.
Obviously anxiety leading up to that and the performance anxiety it would happen. But, in hockey, it was like, I didn't know I was going to fight. I didn't know when it was going to happen. It might not happen at all. As soon as one fight's done, do I have to fight again? Am I fighting again this game? I'm worrying about the next fight, the next game. It's the unknown,
So that was kind of your turn into what you're doing now. Not only the physical toll of a regular hockey season, but tack on that you're getting into fisticuffs. There's the anxiety. So then you turn to a more holistic approach to your healing, and that leads into what you're doing now. So why don't you talk about that?
Sure. So it was almost immediately when I retired in 2010. Paul Holmgren called me up that summer in the off season. Shel Samuelson was the assistant coach for the Phantoms at the time. His house had burnt down. There was a job opportunity open with the Phantoms because Sammy was taking care of his family and all the stuff with his house. So it was almost like an easy decision for me. It was an escape strategy. It was like, I can still be in sports, but I don't have to wake up and do this anymore. You know what I mean? I love being in the locker room. I loved everything about hockey. It was part of a huge part of my life forever, and I just saw this as an escape strategy. So getting into the coaching was more of a play to heal. So it was to get away from the lifestyle that I was living. And as hard as I went on the ice, I went just as hard off the ice. I drank a lot, I partied a lot. I didn't put enough emphasis and a premium on my health. And you know what I mean? It was always about other people and protecting other people. And and I needed to be a little bit more selfish and take care of myself and my own individual health and physical health and mental health. So, being in over 250 fights, it wears on you. There was some residual from concussion, post-concussion, in my physical body. I had surgery almost every other year. My arthritis in my hands and my fingers and everything was sore. So I just, I made a decision to heal. Just transitioning from an animal protein to a plant-based protein, and really focusing on digestibility and bioavailability as opposed to just how many grams of protein we're going to scoop into our shaker today.
Right.
Just be more mindful about it all. I'm so passionate about it because it helps everybody. Coaching is 23-man roster. Yeah, I can help these guys find their way a little bit, maybe not. But I feel like I have the knowledge and the wisdom through my suffering and my story to help bring this thing to light and do what I can with my platform.
Yeah, the push for legalizing marijuana, just the words, it just seems like so taboo whenever you say, even if you're talking about a t-shirt, even if you say hemp, cannabis, marijuana, CBD, every time you just say the word, it seems like you have to pick a side automatically because it is such a political buzzword.
Yep.
And there's just so much going on. But can you go, this could be a whole podcast, but can you go on and talk about CBD, what it is, and like you said, it's a non-psychedelic oil extract, but why don't you delve into that a little if you can?
Sure. I think the simplest way to understand the cannabis plant is, I don't use the word marijuana because that is kind of like a racial slur given to the plant by the government to demonize it. So I don't use that word. Cannabis is the word. Cannabis is the umbrella term for hemp, which is grown below 0.3% THC, and resinous cannabis, which would be anything above 0.3% THC. So recreational, medical fall under that category.
Yeah.
So CBD can be found in all of those plants. The CBD I'm talking about specifically is derived from industrial hemp. So it's grown below 0.3% THC, and CBD, cannabidiol, is a compound, a non-psychoactive compound found in the cannabis plant. I think they've discovered up to 120 different cannabinoids. THC and CBD are really the two buzzwords that most people hear of, but there's CBG, CBN, all these other compounds. Much like an orange has vitamin C, vitamin D, all these different nutrients, very much the same. So the CBD is high anti-inflammatory, which most disease states and recovery is nothing more than an abundance of inflammation. So we're trying to remove inflammation, whether it's just arthritis, physical inflammation, or disease states where most disease is an abundance of inflammation depending on what disease you're dealing with. So the people that want to hate on that, and the ignorant people that don't understand it, they're fine with drinking alcohol, and they're fine with drinking refined carbohydrates and high fructose corn syrup, which those two things alone are very destructive to the brain. So you talk about mental health and brain health. To me, it's like we're talking about harm reduction here. I'm not just saying here it's just like legalize it just for absolutely no good reason. I look around and I see destruction. I see a lot of darkness. I see a lot of suffering, and the laws have kind of allowed this. We've been fundamentally misled. This is all political. This has nothing to do with what's good or bad for people. If it was about that, cannabis would be legal, and all these other destructive substances would be illegal. You know what I mean? And high fructose corn syrup should be a Schedule I drug. No medicinal value and highly addictive. You know what I mean? And when we look at the culture, we have a health crisis, we have obesity crisis, we have mental health crisis, we have an addiction crisis, we have an opioid crisis. You want to talk about that? We have a heroin crisis in our hands in our country here because of prohibition of cannabis.
Well, this is something really near and dear to your heart, so much so that you opened up, or you started your own brand of oils, balms, ointments, things like that.
Yep.
Body Check. Why don't we go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so Body Check Wellness is a hemp-derived CBD company, and we provide hemp products grown below 0.3% THC, federally legal now. Donald Trump signed this thing into law right before Christmas, and this is something that I support because first of all, I use these things, and I know from experience, but I'm now on the formulation side where I know where this is growing. This is grown in soil that has been 100% organic from the start. There's the process of proper, horticulture and understanding of plant medicine. So for me, it's like I put my whole credibility on the line with this stuff because it gives me so much relief, and all I want to do is, yeah, it's a business, but I mean, in a perfect world, you can have a business and help and heal people at the same time. So
it's not what you do, it's why you do it.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's like I've seen the destruction, and I still see it. And you look at professional sports or sports in general, and the sports medical establishment just runs parallel to the traditional medical establishment, and that's pills. Every symptom has a pill for that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be that way. That model just creates addiction and dependency. The kicker is that the U.S. government holds a patent on cannabinoids as neuroprotectants. So we talk about the crisis of concussion, TBI, and CTE. Well, guess what? Magically, these cannabinoids offer neuroprotectant properties, and not only just protect brain cell, they actually promote brain cell growth. Mm-hmm. So neurogenesis. So you see children with epilepsy that respond very well to CBD. You see children with autism respond very well to CBD. People with concussions and TBI respond very well, and all the way to the geriatrics patients. We're looking at people with Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, and they just respond very well to this. So clearly it has a positive impact on the brain. So anybody that wants to hate on this and say, well, what about the developing brain? Well, I say, well, maybe get your child off the high fructose corn syrup and then come talk to me. I don't like seeing people suffer. I don't it hurts me. And I just want to, introduce people to these tools and try to kill the ignorance. And there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be people that challenge it, but
well, it's all about education, and that's why you're on the show today.
Yeah.
So one more thing, because I am on the fence on this. I do take CBD oil, and I am a little shy telling people that because it is taboo.
Yeah.
I don't do other drugs. I rarely drink at all. I do have a healthy diet, thanks to my wife, Brittany. But I do take it for my joint pain, for healing. I do take the capsule, and you cannot deny the healing powers. I personally know people with children that had multiple seizures a week and then got on a CBD regimen, and they might have one a month. And your sister, Jamie, right? She has MS, and through nutrition and the CBD and the oils, she's learned to, control that. Or, you can't control it, but
manage it.
Manage it. So you cannot deny the healing factors.
Sure.
Flip side, let's look at Colorado, where it is legal.
Sure.
And it is the canary in the mine shaft because they legalized it 5 years ago. All the money that they thought the state was going to receive, a lot of that is going to law enforcement because crime is on the rise, and because of all of the non-licensed dispensaries that are opening up. They said that all this money would go into the schools, and all the schools are saying is all we're seeing is more marijuana in the schools. So it's really not seeing, the results that they hoped for. What is your take? What is your vision on how this country embraces cannabis?
Yeah, so I'd actually disagree with some of that, in the sense that if you look at it from like a harm reduction standpoint, opiates and opiate-related deaths are down significantly. Addiction is down.
Well, New Jersey just passed that.
Is down significantly. The problem with what you're saying is that that's just over-regulation. It's like law enforcement. It's like if I outlawed coffee beans right now, we'd have a new class of criminal. So all of a sudden we have all these different jobs of law enforcement where it's petty law enforcement. It's like, why don't we spend that energy on something that's real, like the terrorism and the real evil people, not the cannabis smoker, not the I understand you have to some people to regulate unlicensed businesses and stuff like that, but like. To me, it's more so of over-regulation and really just like being realistic with what we're trying to solve as law enforcement. But the amount of tax revenue, if you did it right, it's all political. So if you did it right, the amount of tax revenue generated, you can fuel education, systems and programs properly. I don't know how much money has gone into those things, but again, that's not the cannabis. That's bureaucratic red tape. That's over-regulation, and that's that's not cannabis. For me, if I had it my way, cannabis would be something that we could have home grow. Grow in your backyard or basement, because guess what? It's medicine. Just like you can grow a tomato, we need to be self-sustainable. That we should be encouraging our people, but it's business. It's business. It's business. It's money.
There's a lot of money to be made.
And for I have 2 daughters, three in a hook and turning 2. I don't want my kids being in this alcohol-driven society. I'd rather have my kids out using cannabis. Cannabis is a substance. Don't get me wrong. It needs to be respected, just like everything else. But that needs to be taught.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're not teaching that. It's almost like we open up the floodgates with cannabis, but we don't tell people what it is. Like, look at Canada. They have a 12-year medical program. They just went fully legal, but the average Canadian doesn't even understand it. Didn't even know the medical cannabis program existed. So we're not really teaching them. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay, well, they were just gonna lump this in with alcohol. Go figure it out yourself. Well, guess what? They're totally separate. And again, that's part of the system's fault. They know what they're doing. They don't want this cat out of the bag too much. They don't want, you know what I mean? It interferes with tobacco, it interferes with alcohol, it interferes with this business model that cannabis interferes with. The resinous cannabis is illegal because of hemp and not the other way around. It just interferes with too much business. So they're kind of just, hush, hush, push, and you know what I mean? And they don't want it to be this such an obvious impact positively to society that everyone's like, oh my God, we gotta have global legalization. It's a slow process, you know what I mean? It's take a little bit, give a little, take a little bit, give a little bit. The numbers are staggering in Colorado as far as harm reduction and the amount of tax money. Again, it's the state. It's up to the state then to do things positively with it. If you're just going to jack that back up into law enforcement and militarize your police, well, guess what? Like we're losing sight of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring peace and healing to people.
So something special that we do on Cruisin with Zach is called the lightning round.
Okay.
And even someone like yourself is not immune to this. I'm going to ask you a couple questions real quick, and you try and answer them as quickly as you can.
One-word answers?
As quickly as you can. Whenever, if you want to elaborate, you can elaborate.
Okay.
But here we go.
Yep.
If you were in a food eating contest and you can eat one food and win, what would you eat?
Bananas.
Okay. If you had to pick someone to play you in a movie, who would you pick?
Ben Stiller.
Okay, I can see that.
People have called me that before. That's the only reason.
Ben needs to bulk up a little bit.
Yeah.
But third question: if you could have one superpower, not flying, what would you have?
I'd probably be more of a healing power, impacting people more easily. You know what I mean? Instead of having to explain myself so much, people would just believe me.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So Riley, we're pulling up to the Wachovia Center right now. You got a lot going on today. Thank you so much
no problem,
for being on the show.
Anytime. Riley, have more time.
Riley Cote, Body Check,
Wellness.
Body Check Wellness. Look it up. Do your research. Do your education. Athletes for Care. You're doing great things, Riley. I appreciate you being on the show,
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.